Here we go. We're doing the Spanish-American War. This is just a video. You guys have the questions in the handout. I sent that to you this morning. So you're working with us today, and then you will work with us tomorrow, and then Thursday you pretty much got a day off. So, yes.
Okay, what we did in the Spanish-American War. Why didn't America use this in the first two world wars?
A little bit different technology at that point in time. Different enemies, better equipped.
I mean, it still was a good idea because if you come in a line,
It was a good idea. It was a good idea, but it would not have worked. I mean, it wasn't a naval war at first. It was troops on the ground right off the bat. Okay. All right, here we go. The Spanish-American War was fought between the United States and Spain in 1898. The war was fought largely over the independence of Cuba. Okay, most of this we talked about yesterday. Major battles took place in the Spanish colonies of Cuba and the Philippines. Okay? The war began on April 25th, 1898, when the United States declared war on Spain. Remember, Spain had declared war on us a couple of days earlier. The fighting ended with a U.S. victory 3.5 months later, August 12, 1898. Now that's the way you fight a war, 3.5 months, and it's over. Boom. That's the way to do it.
That's the equivalent
Yes.
of Bulgaria War.
No.
How long was World War?
Long. Okay. Leading up to the war, okay, you had Cuban revolutionaries had been fighting for the independence of Cuba for many years. Okay, they first fought the 10-year war between 1868 and 1878. And in 1895, the Cuban rebels rose up again under the leadership of Joseph Marti, and many Americans supported the cause of the Cuban rebels and wanted the United States to intervene. Okay? So, intervene means to get involved in it. We were sitting back. We kind of have a history of that, or we had a history of that. Now we kind of jump in to try to police the world, it seems like. But in the olden days, we had a little bit of a history of sitting back and waiting. World War I, we waited late to get involved. World War II,
we got attacked.
we waited late to get involved.
But we had to go because we got attacked by Japan.
Well, that did encourage us to join in, definitely. Okay. The sinking of the battleship Maine, when conditions in Cuba worsened in 1898, President McKinley sent the U.S. battleship Maine to Cuba to help protect American citizens and the interests in Cuba. Okay, we did have business interests down there, sugar cane, stuff of that nature. That also played into part of we needed to make sure Cuba was happy and, not under duress and stuff like that. Again, we did have alternative interests there. On February 15th, 1898, a huge explosion caused the Maine to sink into Havana Harbor. Although no one was sure exactly what caused the explosion, many Americans, of course, blamed Spain. Because, they are the ones that were kind of down there.
Doing a bunch of bad stuff.
Yeah. And they wanted to go to war because of it. Now, we never did have proof that Spain was responsible for the sinking.
They probably were.
But it's probably a good strong bet that it probably was.
So it was
The U.S. declares war. President McKinley resisted going to war for a few months, but eventually public pressure to act became too great. That and a number of things was happening that kind of like, oh, okay, they're going to blow up our ships. They're going to, Yeah, on April 25th, 1898, the United States declared war on Spain, and the Spanish-American War began. Okay?
It's time for the big old.
Now, in the Philippines, the first action of the United States was to attack the Spanish battleships in the Philippines. That's what we talked about yesterday. To prevent them from going to Cuba. On May the 1st, 1898, the Battle of Manila Bay occurred, and the U.S. Navy, led by Commodore George Dewey, soundly defeated the Spanish Navy and took control of the Philippines. If you remember, the battle lasted about 6 hours, so they estimate it was probably over in the first 2. But they just kept bombarding the Spanish ships until they made sure they
Better
could
safe
not
than
be.
sorry.
Yeah, they wanted to make sure they could not be used against them in future dates. Okay, I mean, if you're going to attack the enemy, you do want to definitely
Or they're
make
just
sure that
showing
they are
off.
disabled and can't come back. Okay? All right, now the Rough Riders. The United States needed to get soldiers to help fight in the war. One group of volunteers included cowboys, ranchers, and outdoorsmen. They earned the nickname the Rough Riders. Okay, so that's where the Rough Riders came from. They were cowboys, ranchers, outdoorsmen. These were not the city guys that had never been on a horse. They are originally a cavalry unit, which means they rode horses. Okay. Now, as we talked yesterday, though, when they got ready to go to Cuba, they didn't have room for the horses. So now you got a cavalry unit with no horses. So, or they're actually a cavalry unit if they don't have the horse.
They ride pigs, huh?
Okay.
And they're infantry.
All right.
They ride
And they were led by a guy named Theodore Roosevelt, or Teddy Roosevelt.
That's what
Okay. He, of course, is a future president of the United States. If you remember, he was the assistant secretary to the Navy during this time. Okay, and that's why the Navy was built up. He was responsible for getting the Navy built up, and with more modern equipment and technology, better trained than what the other armed forces was at this point in time. Okay. All right. And that's a picture. That's actually a picture of him sitting on his horse. He had that mustache, and he always had that. Shown with that hat. Okay. San Juan Hill. The U.S. Army arrived in Cuba and began to fight the Spanish. One of the more famous battles was the Battle of San Juan Hill. In this battle, a small Spanish force on San Juan Hill managed to hold off a much larger U.S. force from advancing. Many U.S. soldiers were gunned down trying to take the hill. Finally, a group of soldiers led by the Rough Riders charged up the nearby Kettle Hill and gained the advantage the U.S. needed to take San Juan Hill. So that is the charge up San Juan Hill. It makes it sound like they actually went up right up the middle of San Juan Hill. They actually went up Kettle Hill and kind of came over into San Juan, onto the San Juan Hill. Okay, but it was still a very brave move. I mean, they're under heavy fire, and they charged because I guess they're tired of just laying around being pinned down, so they decided they was gonna make something happen.
Heavy fire back then
And
was
they
just
did.
a lot of rounds, but heavy fire nowadays is just like Gatling guns coming at you, like the modern day ones.
Yeah, now like M16s and things like that, because they're using the military, they can be fully automatic, which basically means all you got to do, you put a 30 clip in there, you pull the trigger one time and it will keep firing until you let go of the trigger. You don't have to pull it 30 times to shoot 30 bullets. You can just fully go. It's almost like a machine gun. Okay, it's fully automatic.
Guns look so modern
At that
today.
point,
Okay, you can't buy one of those. Well, you're not supposed to be able to buy one of those.
you got semi-auto.
All right, you got semi-auto, which means you got to pull the trigger every
Like
time.
an AR-15 is like the.
All right.
Don't you have a trigger?
Now,
finger?
after the Battle of San Juan Hill, the U.S. forces moves on to the city of Santiago. Okay, and this is where soldiers on the ground began to siege the city, while the U.S. Navy destroyed the Spanish warships off the coast in the Battle of Santiago. Okay, surrounding the Spanish army, they surrendered in July. On July the 17th, the Spanish surrenders. Okay. And as a result, when the Spanish forces defeated the two sides, they agreed to stop fighting on August the 12th, 1898. So the formal peace treaty, the Treaty of Paris, was signed on December 19th, 1898.
Oh, that's the Treaty of Paris?
Yep. As part of the treaty, Cuba gained its independence and Spain gave up control of the Philippine Islands, Guam, and Puerto Rico
That's how
Oh, did you
to
know
the United States, and they are still territories to us. But we did give them $20 million. Not like we just took them in the war. The United States actually purchased these territories for $20 million. This is
That's how we
1898.
have Philippines to the World
But
War.
that is why we now have the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico. We already had Midway Island. We bought Midway Island back in the
That
mid-1800s, which turns out when World War II hits,
Yeah, that was like a.
turns out to be one of the best real estate purchases ever.
They're
Okay?
petitioning to make Puerto Rico a state
Yes, they are.
and Washington D.C.
Yes, they
Yeah.
are.
No, Washington D.C. isn't
Yes,
like.
they are.
It's its own.
Hopefully not,
It's-
but
it's
they
a
are.
district.
I like
Yeah,
the
but it's a
50s. Let's
It's
just
the
leave it alone.
district of.
All right, now.
Imagine what the flag would become.
If it was
Interesting
Columbia,
fact.
they would say Washington State.
I'm sorry. Do you hear me up here talking? Thank you. Interesting facts about the Spanish-American War. The leader of Spain during the war was Queen Regent Maria Cristina. That's in Spain. Many historian experts today don't think that the Spanish were involved in the sinking of the Maine, USS Maine. Okay, think about it. It could have been Cuban freedom fighters trying to entice war. Okay, it could have been an American trying to entice war. Okay, so there's really
Could
no
have been
proof.
just-
We don't really know who was responsible for the explosion. Okay, Spain took the blame, and that was one of like the last straw. Some American newspapers at the time used yellow journalism to sensationalize the war and the sinking of the Maine. They had little research or facts to back up their claim. Yellow journalism. The term fake news has been thrown out a lot
It's all fake
in the
news.
last few years. Even before President Trump, it was still people were talking about fake news.
It is.
A big fake
And
news.
that is basically people. The news is a lot of times they're giving their opinion. They're not stating fact. They're
Yeah, it's
giving
like
their
this-
opinion. And the news should be based on
News.
facts, what's actually happening. Okay, and then you draw your opinion. But yellow journalism is where they try to sway your opinion to
Wow.
their side. And we see a lot of that nowadays. We're seeing a lot of that. Both conservative and liberal
What news network?
news agencies try to sway with their opinions instead of just reporting the facts and letting us make our own minds up. Okay? Although the Rough Riders were a cavalry unit, most of them didn't actually ride horses during the Battle of San Juan Hill because they couldn't take them with them. They had to fight on the foot because their horses couldn't be transported to Cuba. In 1903, the new government of Cuba agreed to lease the Guantanamo Bay naval base to the United States, and we still lease it, even though it's a communist country. We still have a naval base there. That's where we take the terrorists during the Afghanistan and Iraqi conflicts. Okay, today it is the Otis Oversea Naval Base. All right. Okay, so that's your 13-minute video. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of it. Bye.